Today is the 12th of August. It is my great privilege and honor to welcome to Transition Protocol a world renowned, world respected, globally recognized analyst that you have all seen and no doubt heard from. My great friend, Pravin Sawhney. He's going to talk to you about all the events that are taking place all around us. If you like what we do, please hit the like and subscribe button, become a paid member so we deliver this inside your mailbox twice a week. Go ahead, Pravin.
Thank you so much, Zulfikar, and always a big thank you for getting me on your channel. Now, there are a couple of things that I want to talk about. The first is start with the Makkah Joint Defence Agreement that everybody's been talking about. Seems like nobody is very clear about it, and the reason for that is very obvious because all the three countries and Iran do not want to share much clarity on it. So, but if you read between the lines, it becomes very clear what it is about. There should be no doubt at all. Why they don't want clarity is because the war is still not over. That is the reason. So, now what it aims to do, let's understand that part first. The idea is that the American framework, which is based on absolute security, the security framework which is there in the region on the concept of absolute security, which is a zero sum game. All their bases, this is the thinking of the Americans, this is the thinking of the world until now. The concept of absolute security, it's a zero sum game, it leads to wars, it leads to conflicts. This is to be replaced by a regional framework based on collective security. Now, collective security is an entirely different ballgame. I won't go in the details except to say that this was enunciated or this vision was drawn by President Putin and by President Xi Jinping in 2013. The idea of collective security, and what you do in collective security is that you sit down and negotiate your problems. You're not looking at your security at the expense of others' security. You're looking at talks, you're looking at a via media, because the focus of collective security is development and progress of both the nations or all the nations who accept the concept of collective security. So, this is what it is. So, these three countries which have got together, they are to support the collective security concept, which was announced by Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi on the 29th of June. He publicly said that. And he said that after his visit to Russia, which was on the 27th of April, where he met President Putin in St. Petersburg, and having also gone to China, which was on 6th of May, where he met Wang Yi. After that, we know that on the 17th of June, the Islamabad MOU was signed. And the most important thing which has been underplayed is that on the 23rd of June, Pezeshkian, the Iranian president, he paid a state visit to Islamabad. And the reason for that was very simple, besides other things which they said in their press note. The idea was to get the Pakistanis on board to basically run this regional security framework based on the concept of collective security. So the Pakistanis came on board, and therefore on the 29th, as I said, Arakchi announced that. And the two things that he said publicly were that in this regional framework, the outside powers will be excluded. And the other thing that he said is this is about a regional security architecture where all the countries of the region, they'll talk to one another and they'll see how their issues can be resolved. It's basically security, and after that even the economic issues, because eventually this framework has to lead to development and progress of all the nations. After the Americans the leave West Asia. And after that, another important event, which once again has been underplayed, that happened on the 13th and 14th of July. when Field Marshal Asim Munir he visited Turkey. He had a he had a sorry interaction with the top leadership there, and it was finally on the 7th of August that the Pakistani press note came out, which spoke about the joint the Makkah Joint Defence Agreement. As I said, it has two parts. One part, which is clearly written in the Pakistani press note, is collective security. It talks about that. So, right now, it is about the region, and this has to be expanded to the Islamic world. And this is where Pakistan will be doing a very big job. So, just to stop here to make a point, Pakistan is not only the key mediator today between Trump and the Iranians, top leadership. Pakistan also will be doing the heavy lifting in getting the Islamic countries understand the concept of collective security, which underlines the new world order vision supported by Russia and China. Now, to go further, after collective security, another thing that this press note talks about is collective deterrence. And here there seems to be a lot of confusion. A lot of American analysts are saying that look, this is on the lines of NATO because it talks about that attack on one will be considered attack on all. No, it does not say that, because you have to read the social note which has been put out the same day on 7th of August by the Turkish Prime Minister Erdogan, where he clearly says that this will be under Article 51 of the United Nations. So, collective deterrence has two parts. First part is to deter. What that means is that any country outside country will be deterred because these three countries stand together. And obviously, here the signal or the indication is to Israel, which is in West Asia, but with which all the countries have more or less a problem, including Turkey today has a problem with them. So, this is the deter part. The second part is about defense. And defense is under Article 51 of the United Nations, and this is clearly been written in the social post of Erdogan. He has mentioned that. In other words, everything, the defense which is to be done, will be done under the United Nations. So it is not NATO like, first of all. NATO has nothing to do with United Nations. And if you see Article 51, it clearly says that defensive action will be taken if there is an attack on any country, and that country will inform also the UN Security Council that an attack has taken place on us. That means the centrality of UN will be maintained. And after that, that country will decide whether it wants to do individual self defense or it wants a collective self defense. What that means is, hypothetically speaking, if there is a war or a skirmish between Israel and Turkey, then Turkey will decide what sort of a help it wants from the other two members of the defense agreement. Nothing is automatic here. They may perhaps want some more, because they will have a joint defense partnership. They may want something from the production lines of the Pakistanis. They may want something from the Saudis. So this is to be expanded. And already a lot of countries in the GCC, which is Kuwait and Bahrain, they all have shown interest to join this. And as far as Pakistan is concerned, Pakistan has gone out of West Asia also on the African continent, where it has done a defense cooperation again on the similar lines of collective security with Somalia. And in my assessment, what we will see is that the Pakistanis will expand this further in the African continent, because Africa today has 54 countries, of which 20 are Muslim majority countries. So the Pakistanis will try and do a defense cooperation with all those countries. How that has been possible is, I don't have to go, the roots go back to Operation Sindoor, where all the countries have come to the conclusion that Pakistan not only has nuclear weapons, not only it is a Muslim country, it has very credible conventional war capabilities, and it has no diplomatic ties with Israel. And all the three great powers in the multipolar world, they are comfortable interacting with Pakistan. So this is what, in very short, is this whole thing about. Now coming to Pakistan, see the problem with Trump is that he also knows, and the Iranians understood. They are wise people, that the war that started on February 28th, it actually ended on April 8th, when the air campaign of 39 days of the American and the Israeli combined air forces, they did not produce the desired results. That was the end of it. After that, it has only been bluster, it has only been posturing by President Trump. And today we know that he has really no military options left, and time is running out for him. Not only he has the November elections, the strategic petroleum reserves have gone down. Reports are talking that today they are as low in America as of 1983. And then the other problem that Trump faces is that there is no way that he can fill up the shortage, a massive shortage of missiles and interceptor missiles in a hurry, which is why a lot of reports are coming. He's screaming and shouting at Pete Hegseth for having given him wrong information about the state of preparedness of the American forces. This is something that I have spoken on your channel earlier also, that as far as the Iranians are concerned, Iranians fought with the 21st century capabilities, a US military, very powerful military with 20th century capabilities. So you see, all this started after the 8th of April, which is what I said, that Arakchi, he first went to Russia on the 27th of April and then to China to get their support for the regional security architecture, in which the heavy lifting within West Asia, outside West Asia, in the Islamic world will be done by Pakistan. Not only that, the Pakistani Interior Minister, he was there meeting up with the top secretary, the newly appointed secretary of the Supreme National Security Council of Iran, Mohsin Rezi. So, what are they discussing? They are basically discussing the role and the steps that need to be taken ahead. That is what is being going on in my assessment. And as far as the Iranians are concerned, by a major reshuffle of their military, which they have publicly announced also, what they are doing is make no mistake about it, many people think that it's all rhetoric. There is no rhetoric involved here at all. When the Iranians do something, take it seriously, because until now, until today, or since the recent announcement of this reshuffle, what was going on is that the Iranians were focusing more on diplomacy, having won the war on April 8th. So, two factors they were focusing on: one was diplomacy, and the second was to build up their indigenous capabilities of missiles and drones, with a lot of material coming from outside, perhaps from China, perhaps from Russia. So their state of the art missiles, which they are today talking of, which is what we call the hypersonic cruise missiles, missiles which go at the speed of more than 5 Mach. Mach is the speed of sound. Missiles which are maneuverable, missiles which travel at the higher reaches of the atmosphere. They are unstoppable. And on the other hand, the Israelis and the Americans simply do not have the interceptors. So that was stage one. Stage two is that after this military reshuffle, which has been announced, while they will not deflect from their objective, this is important. What is the objective of Iran today? The objective that they have spelled out very clearly is that the US forces go out of the region. They are no longer talking about Article 4 of the MOU, which spoke in very ambiguous terms that the American forces they go away from Iran's proximity. Now they are talking of the region, because once the American forces go out of the region, that is the time that this framework will come into play, which is being built up through this joint defense agreement between these three countries. And I said this will keep increasing, so both the work are going on simultaneously. So as part of this, surely what the Iranian military leadership is today looking at is Israel, because Israel has made it very clear that they will not vacate from Lebanon, that they will not vacate from Gaza, which is completely unacceptable to the Iranians. So, therefore, what the Iranians are trying to do is all this to and fro that is happening. Pakistan, Mohsin Naqvi going there to Iran, Iranian president publicly saying once again, Pezeshkian, that we have strategic ties with Pakistan. Actually, today it's a very close relationship and it will stay this way. Why? Let me again, I keep, deflecting to keep making certain points. Why it will stay this way is because what is being created is a Muslim or a Islamic framework. And this is a perfect example of a Sunni and a Shia nation working hand in hand together. This is a perfect example. This will stay this way, and they are neighbors also. So what is now going on is that the Iranians, despite having publicly spoken about very strict conditions, firm conditions, that the Strait of Hormuz will not open unless the Americans lift the naval blockade, unless all sanctions are dropped, unless the American forces leave the region, unless their frozen funds are released, and unless all their allies, there is permanent peace there, referring to Lebanon, the Yemenis, and the Gaza, basically Gaza and Lebanon, these two areas, and the Americans pay the war reparations, all the things which are there in the MOU. And by the way, MOU has also on 7th, 17th of this month, it would have done it 60 days also. You see, so the situation is simple. They are talking all this, they mean all this, but at the same time, a lot of work is being done by the Pakistanis to see if Trump can still come down and start talking and agreeing to the MOU, which surely is heavily in favor of Iran. There is no doubt on that. If they don't do that, I said that they will not deflect from their focus. The focus is to help Pakistan and all the three countries, which is even Turkey. If you see the Turkish foreign minister, he had gone to Libya. Now, Libya again has no diplomatic ties with Israel. They have a lot of problems with Israel. So, both are doing a lot of work. Turkey is doing, Pakistan is doing, but the work that Pakistan is doing is much more substantive and it will keep expanding. So, what the Iranians are for the time being looking at is that if the Pakistanis can get on their terms, and what is their terms? That nothing will be diluted in the MOU which was signed on the 17th of June. If Trump agrees to come and talk on that, fair enough. After that, I expect, all this reshuffling that has happened is the target will be Israel, because that is where the concentration today of the American forces is. Besides that, the Americans hardly have anything anywhere else. You see the aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln, that has had a problem. Suicides have happened there. Gerald Ford has gone out. So you can't fight a 21st century war with all these big, big aircraft carriers. So, this is in a nutshell. So, if I may just conclude my this bit by saying that A, Iranians are totally fixated on the on creation of this regional framework where they know that Pakistanis will be doing a lot of work. And the Pakistanis are willing to do that, besides being the mediators, to take this at some stage, which they have already started with Somalia, to outside the region also to the Muslim world. This is one part. Second part is the Iranians want, with the help of Pakistani mediation, to get Trump to talk seriously on the MOU. That means then Trump will be responsible to see that Article 1 of the MOU, it is carried forward, it is done. And Article 1 talks about America talking to Israel that look, you have to take out your forces from Lebanon and Gaza, which is certain that the Israelis will not listen to America. And after that, what we will see is that if this war continues in any America and its empire in any case is sinking, but the target then will be Israel of the Iranians. This is the way, Zulfikar, I see the overall picture.
Well, I totally second that, and I support every single statement that you have made, every single conclusion that you have made. I have spent quite a bit of time today talking to many people, particularly those who are aligned with our network, our channel, co-founders Larry and Larry Johnson and Pepe Escobar. They are deeply sourced, in addition to the sources that we have within Pakistan and within the highest security apparatus of Pakistan and also in Iran. And everything that you have said is remarkably accurate. I would like to bring your attention to something that you and I were talking about briefly before we started. What do you make of this rank stupidity that comes out of the White House? Which, I mean, everybody knows is rank stupidity, except maybe Trump doesn't know that it's rank stupidity. Uh, I, I doubt whether he understands the difference between rank stupidity and reality, which is why he is in this war. That Besant has been telling people that, oh, don't worry about Strait of Hormuz. We have an alternative to it. We are building it, blah, 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 pipelines, etc. My worry is that Trump may actually believe this nonsense. And if he does believe this nonsense, then he may not, in fact, come to the conclusion that everybody else has come to, which is that he has to walk out with the exit ramp given to him by Iran in somewhat of a graceful manner, which will be withdrawn if he doesn't do that very soon. And you are a very astute analyst, one of the most astute persons who has informed information about all of this. What do you make of this?
Well, Zulfikar, before I answer your question, what there's another news that I want to draw your attention to. And the news is that Saudi Arabia, which is also a member of this Joint Defence Agreement, which has been signed, and what they have done is they have also opened what is called the Land Corridor, Green Land Corridor with Oman. So the point to make here is that this Green Land Corridor, it was running when the war was going on between UAE and Oman. Now this corridor has been extended to Saudi Arabia, which is roughly a distance of over 700 kilometers. This is a land route. Basically, what happens is that you bypass the Strait of Hormuz. There is a shortage of food that is happening. So UAE was getting all the food through this corridor from Oman. And now the Saudis also have tied up. So the trucks will come there, then the shipment will come, the cargo will come, then it will get on the trucks, and then it will travel through this 700 kilometers, then it will reach Saudi Arabia. So the point that I am making is that Saudis are already feeling the pinch, the big pinch, because we have to keep in mind that all these GCC countries, and Saudi is the biggest of them, they are hugely dependent on food from outside. They are hugely dependent on water from outside, the desalination plants that they have put. So their dependence is massive. So if this is what the Saudis have started, surely they are thinking that the American bases have to go from here, from our soil. It is a matter of time when the Saudis will become more firm in telling Trump that whatever remnants of their air bases are there on the Saudi soil is a vulnerability for Saudis and that needs to go out. That is one part. And as I said, there are more and more GCC countries which want to join this defense agreement. I mean, they already have shown interest. Kuwait have shown interest, and Bahrain has shown interest, and they'll all join. And if this corridor is functioning, which it is, as I said, this Greenland corridor, obviously the Iranians are in the knowledge of it, and they are allowing that. Why? Because Iranians are trying to create a regional framework. Unnecessarily, they don't want to hit Saudi Arabia or hit any other GCC country. Now, once we get this background correct and we understand how much of pressure the Saudis today are under, it should become very clear to everybody that Scott Bessent is not making sense at all. Because for a country like Saudi, food is a problem. They are unable to sell their oil. The Red Sea is closed. The Houthis are troubling them by the hour. They are in big trouble. And this, first of all, these pipelines cannot be made when the war is going on. That is one thing that has to be understood. How is the infrastructure? How will it be flown in? Where will it come from? Which is the route it will take? So, this is all a fantasy, a dream, nothing more than that. And then the point is that all these countries, if this they are under so much of pressure, they will be against this oil pipeline. They would rather integrate with the regional infrastructure. And the Iranians have been talking for a long time, and I'm sure even these three countries of the defense agreements will be talking to the Saudis, talking to the other GCC countries. I'm just keeping the UAE apart because they have a different ball game, but they'll come to senses sooner or later. So my point is that when Scott Bessent talks about has he put any time frame, is there any way forward, has he spoken of a mechanism? This is just shooting in the air. It means nothing at all. These pipelines are not realizable at all. You see, because the war is going on. Once the war is over and the Americans are not there, what pipelines are you drawing? And who will allow you to do that? So that is, I think, Zulfikar is not making sense to me at all.
Of course, I never suggested that he made sense to anyone. Parveen, I was only commenting that such nonsense comes out of his mouth, but it is directed only at one person, and you and I both know who that person is. And that person may be believing this nonsense. And that person, having believed this nonsense, may prolong this further than it needs to go. Now, as viewers of our channel know, I have the honor and privilege of receiving some intelligence from sources that are in the room, so to speak, and are in conversations with everybody who's making decisions. Mohsin Naqvi, he just came back from having visited with the number two man in Iran now, and Mohsen Rezai, and the briefing that he gave to the Pakistani leadership, which I'm honored to have some information on, is that they are willing to make a deal through Pakistan, obviously, but they will not go back an inch, not a centimeter on their core demands. They will relax upon only one condition, and that is of reparations. And that will only be to the extent of postponing a discussion on that until a little bit later stage. And it will not be made a precondition. That is the reporting coming out of Pakistan. That is the reporting coming out of Iran. And as far as I know, uh, they have been talking to J.D. Vance, sometimes personally, sometimes through his intermediaries. And as far as I know, they have received an affirmative signal from Vance, but they do not know whether Trump is on board with that or not. He may still be in his la la land, thinking that Scott Besson will deliver this pipeline. So, how do you think this pans out in the next, let us say, few days? Because they don't really have much more than a few days before a catastrophe happens.
See, first of all, I agree entirely with that, what you are saying, war reparation, but I would go much more in sort of because see, what the Iranians want is uh, that the Americans get out of West Asia. This is their requirement. And there are a lot of Iranians today who are also talking about today petro yuan. Now, whether petro yuan happens or not is not important. The important part is that Iran will very soon be part of the National Development Bank. You see, already the news is coming, which we know is the BRICS Bank. And in the BRICS Bank, what they are looking at is trade in national currency settlements and cross border payments, how they are to be done, which mean bypassing the US dollar. So that is one part that is going on. So as I said, their objective is this, and as far as Hormuz is concerned, they control that. We have spoken about this earlier also, that the management of that is with the coastal states, which is Iran and Oman. Security is with the IRGC Navy, and they will also take the interest of the littoral nations, which is the GCC countries, as well as international law into account. So they will not relent at all on Strait of Hormuz. They will not relent at all on allowing them to trade their oil, or lift all sanctions on their trade, their oil, their gas, their petrochemicals, and they will not relent on that. And then their own frozen assets, they will not compromise on that. So, as far as war reparation is concerned, that is, as you rightly said, I mean, I agree entirely with that. They will agree to that, and but they will not compromise on the Americans getting the Israelis to get out of Lebanon with the security zone that they have created, and to stop killing this, the Gazans there uh, in Gaza, Palestinians there, what they are doing. And as far as Netanyahu is concerned, he's already trashed the that board of peace of Trump. He has not accepted that because he says that the Hamas has to disarm first, which will not happen. He is not to dictate any longer. The world has changed. The war has changed everything in the region. The dynamics have changed. The map has changed. It is only the Zionists who don't seem to understand this. Trump is getting back to his senses for the simple reason that he's seeing the end of petrodollars. I'm sure somebody has told him that this is where we are. So I agree with you that war reparation is one on which they will be quite happy to compromise, but nothing else they'll compromise. And then there'll be the question of nuclear weapons also, something that nobody has spoken of late, because the entire focus has been on Hormuz. In my opinion, the Iranians perhaps may publicly say that they are not looking for nuclear weapons, not now, after the deal is done, and at the time, if the Americans leave West Asia minus in Israel, they will stay in Israel. They're not going anywhere from there because Israel will have under it the central command capabilities, and it will have under it the CIA. Israel will have all that. So at some stage, because to they have to tell their, it's part of the regional framework to tell all these countries which want to be part of this regional framework and this joint defense agreement, that look, we all are partners. Iran is not a hegemonic power, because there must be doubt in the minds of many of these GCC countries. What if Iran gets the nuclear weapons? So I'm sure at some stage President Pezeshkian or somebody else will clarify that, but that is not the time for it. The time right now is of getting Trump without compromising on Iran's MOU, Islamabad MOU, to come and talk sincerely. Not like what they did on 11th of April when they went to Islamabad and JD Vance headed the American team, and within 24 hours they walked out. And after that, after 2 days, 13th of April, they put the naval blockade. And how has the naval blockade helped? I can't understand. Because they are also suffering. Everybody is in trouble today. And what the Americans don't seem to understand is when you put a naval blockade, it is an act of war. It is only that the Iranians don't want to unnecessarily exaggerate the situation, the military situation. Otherwise, they have the capabilities, they can bump off, they can strike two or three vessels of America, which are there part of the blockade. And then you see the prestige of America, it just goes down. So, what I'm saying is, I agree entirely with you. Pakistan is certainly doing a very big role. It is playing both as a mediator and I put it like this as a mediator, as in building the Islamic framework, which will eventually go beyond West Asia. And after that, this will also go, in my opinion, by 2030. What we will see is this concept of collective security will be accepted by majority of the global south countries, which is 80% of the world population. These are those countries which are hungry for development, which are hungry for progress. They want peace. So this collective security arrangement provides the perfect peace, and all the heavy lifting undoubtedly is being done by the Pakistanis.
Well, agreed, Praveen. I have an additional piece of reporting to share with our audience, with yourself, coming directly from Islamabad after having had consultations with Mohsen Rizai. Uh, and the agreement between these two countries is that the United States may not have the ability to, because of Trump, of course, compromised completely by the Zionists, to demand that Netanyahu stop the bombing in Lebanon, get out of Gaza. So their backup position is that number two plan is that as long as the United States does not come to the rescue of Israel, if it continues to do these things after the United States has left the region, then let Iran deal with Israel on its own terms. This is their backup number two position. And they have either presented this already or are about to present that. And they believe that an agreement on that second contentious part can be made between the two, as long as Trump doesn't begin to believe the nonsense uttered by most recently again by Besant. Now, if that happens, a shooting war will start between Israel and Iran. What do you make of that?
Yeah, see, I'll tell you, this is precisely what I was talking about that you told me is the intelligence, or people have shared this information with you. So here you see there are a couple of issues that have to be kept in mind. The first is that the control of the Zionists over Washington is very strong. And we have seen already in the House, as part of the National Defense Authorization Act 2027, that
Yes.
statement has been
Yes.
cleared. So once we understand that part, then it becomes very clear that even if Trump leaves West Asia, Central Command will remain under Israel and the CIA will remain under Israel. Because for the Zionist in America, it is important that Israel survive. Now, the problem here is Israel does not only want to survive, it does not want to give up its Israel dream. And this is where part two, in my assessment, will be done by the Iranians and the Chinese. See, China is one country, if you recall, in 2023, 2024, they got the rapprochement between Iran and Saudis. After the two countries did not have diplomatic ties for 7 years, then once again, Beijing is the place where the 14 Palestinian groups, including Fatah and Hamas, they were brought together in 2024, to have a united front. So the point I'm getting to is that Palestinian issue, once again, although the Iranians are already talking about it, but then they will be much more open, because unless this Palestinian issue is sincerely on the table, where when today there is hope of it getting resolved, because the Americans are leaving West Asia and the world is multipolar. And all the three, the two great powers, Russia and China, they are in favor of this, the Palestinian issue. So I think that is the crux of the issue. So it will take some time to get the Zionists to their senses, to realize that, look, what they have been dreaming of is all over. They can live in West Asia, but they have to live, with self-respect for the other countries as well. That is the way I see it, Zulfikar, things panning out.
What time frame do you see this taking place?
See, as far as Americans leaving West Asia is concerned, I would say that it will be, it should happen perhaps, mm, maybe 2 months. It can't be more than that. All this
I second
posturing,
that.
no, no, is this posturing? I fail to understand how far can you take it. You see, November is the cutoff for him, and we are already in August. So by November, it is very clear that as far as the GCC countries are concerned, minus UAE, they all are realizing the punch. They are feeling the heat, that there is a problem. As I gave you the example of the Saudis who have opened this Greenland corridor. So they all understand that the bases, American bases coming back on their soil, create a problem for them. They don't give it security, and they all understand that they'll have to discuss the regional issues as far as with Iran, and I'm talking about the Strait of Hormuz, how it is to operate. So their advice will be taken, but the Iranians and the Omanis, they will then decide how it is to be done. Essentially, the Iranians, they are the one who have, they won this war. Simple as that. You see. But a lot of people talk about Iran becoming a superpower. All this lexicon is American lexicon. They keep talking about superpower, and look, the age of superpowers is over. Today, in the multipolar world, there are three great powers. Iran has done something which nobody expected Iran to do. By its wisdom, they have done this, and they are going about in a very methodical way. And so Iran has won the war, and Pakistan is doing the heavy lifting. So, Iran, in my opinion, I think I have in your channel also spoken earlier that when we talk of this RIC, we will perhaps be talking about Russia, Iran, China as the voice of the global south, as the voice that is creating the new world order. And in this new world order, where Chinese are creating the Islamic framework, very big deal.
Indeed, very, very big deal. I mean, I could talk to you for another hour easily, Parveen, but I know that our time has come. Thank you so much for lending your extraordinarily well-informed voice, your wisdom to our channel, to our audience that is global, that is growing. And I appreciate having you here. I appreciate hearing from you. I look forward to it. So thank you so much for lending your voice. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you to our global audience for tuning in. If you like what we do, please hit the like and subscribe button. Go to Substack, become a paid member, same name, Transition Protocol. For $5, we'll deliver it inside your mailbox. Thank you again, Praveen. Do you want to say any final words?
No, my word always is thank you, Zulfikar, for having me on your channel. Thanks a lot.
you're, you're so welcome. I'm going to
Take
hit
care.
this.